Sir Philip Green over the collapse of BHS. In an exclusive interview with our political editor Robert Peston, he insists he's done nothing wrong, but says he's close to a deal on pensions.
How sad and very, very, very sorry I am for all the hardship and sort of sadness caused to all the people that work there, and also the pensioners.
Tonight, the billionaire boss thousands of former BHS workers blame for their plight speaks out at last.
Also on the programme, the mother and daughter murdered as they slept by two 14-year-olds.
Countdown to a decision on airport expansion the government will choose next week.
And standing by her man, Trump's wife says it was nothing more than boy talk.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
Good evening. It's taken a while, but tonight the billionaire boss of the collapsed high street store BHS has apologised for the first time. In an exclusive interview with ITV News, Sir Philip Green says sorry to thousands of workers and pensioners who lost almost everything. But the man called the unacceptable face of capitalism also strikes a defiant tone, insisting he'd done nothing wrong.
He described the stress of recent months as horrible and said he's had a stent put in his heart. And just days before MP vote on whether to strip him of his knighthood, Sir Philip accused them of bullying him and said the Prime Minister didn't know her facts. Our Deputy Political Editor Chris Shipp has our exclusive report.
On the 6th floor of his company headquarters in central London today, Sir Philip Green said many things. The man who sold BHS for £1 said the Prime Minister got her facts wrong. MPs had bullied him. And in the interview with our political editor Robert Peston, he said sorry for the first time.
What have you got to say to those who worked for the business and those who are worried about their pensions?
Well, obviously, and I want to start with you by saying, you know, how sad and very, very, very sorry I am for all the hardship and sort of sadness caused to all the people that work there, also the pensioners. It was never my intention for the business to have the ending it did.
The way it ended, of course, was with the closure of all BHS's 164 stores months after the firm went into administration. But it was not the end of questions for Sir Philip and the huge deficit hanging over the firm's pension fund.
If we arrive at the place where we hope to arrive, there will be no requirement for the PPF.
For the Pension Protection Fund to provide any money?
Correct.
He wouldn't say how much that rescue would cost him, but he did pledge to the firm's pensioners there was some light in the tunnel. You will of course know from any newspaper and any news story on BHS this summer that Sir Philip Green spent many weeks on his rather large boat in the Mediterranean, none of which did his profile any good. And that might have been one of the reasons why the Prime Minister was thought to have had Sir Philip in mind when she said this at her party conference speech.
A director who takes out massive dividends while knowing that the company pension is about to go bust. I'm putting you on warning. This can't go on anymore.
We didn't take a load of dividends before the company failed. More importantly, we put back significantly more than we took out. So to be accused of, oh, you know, we took all the bits, but it's easy to say these things. Got an easy audience listening without knowing all the facts. So I think, you know, we need to correct those facts.
The Prime Minister, he said, would be getting a letter. So what about Frank Field, the chairman of the Commons Work and Pensions Committee, who's called Sir Philip evil and is supporting moves to have him stripped of his knighthood?
Do you care about the knighthood?
I think I care about how these people are behaving, right? You know, all hiding behind parliamentary privilege, which I don't think that's what it was designed for, and just the way they're going about it, trying to bully everybody.
And at the end, he asked staff, pensioners, anyone with a view on BHS to consider the impact it's all had on him.
My priority is to finish this because, to be honest with you, the stress and aggravation of doing all of this. Maybe one last thing I was thinking about, should I or shouldn't I tell you? 6 days before I was due to the parliamentary hearing, I had to have a stent done in my heart. This has been a horrible, horrible, horrible period.
In the next period, however, Sir Philip will be judged on whether he can make good on his promise today to fix the pension, which is worrying so many of his former staff. Chris Ship, ITV News.
Well, Sir Philip insists he's doing everything in his power to sort out the BHS pensions black hole. But tonight, the pensions regulator has told ITV News it's yet to receive a comprehensive and credible proposal from him, as our business editor Joel Hills reports.
Success at BHS helped make Sir Philip Green a billionaire, but it was the failure of the company 1 year after he sold it that has damaged his reputation. Today, Sir Philip apologised for the hardship caused. Grant Atterbury lost his job and is still out of work. Sir Philip insists he wasn't to blame. That's not how Grant sees it.
While he's sort of been swanning around the Med on his yacht and that, we've sort of suffered having to sort of join the dole queue and sort of find our livelihoods taken away from us. And yeah, obviously that has left me quite angry, yeah.
The collapse of BHS cost 11,000 people their jobs and left 20,000 worrying about the future of their pension benefits. When Sir Philip appeared before MPs in the summer, he promised to sort the pension problem. In the 4 months since Sir Philip Green appeared here, the position of BHS's pension scheme has worsened. There is no longer a company to support it, and the deficit has got even larger. Now, my understanding is Sir Philip has made several settlement proposals, but tonight the pensions regulator told me it has yet to receive a credible and comprehensive written proposal, and that it's made clear to Sir Philip exactly what it wants. The MP who co-chaired the investigation that held Sir Philip ultimately responsible for BHS's failure insists the report was fair.
The idea that I was biased and that I could manipulate two committees, that I could pull the strings, is absurd. I mean, the one error which maybe, looking back on it, I made was when I was asked at the beginning, should he lose his knighthood? I didn't dissemble, I didn't avoid it, I answered the question.
Sir Philip swept away from the summer hearings promising to fix the pension deficit. The pensions regulator is signalling that as yet he's not been prepared to pay the sum required. Joel Hills, ITV News.
And our political editor, Sir Robert, I'm just giving you a knighthood, who interviewed Sir Philip earlier today, joins us now. It's an obvious attempt at damage limitation, but what BHS pensioners want to know is, will Sir Philip Green now pay up?
Well, there's a massive culture clash between Sir Philip Green and the regulator. He thinks he can negotiate with the regulator as if he was negotiating a business deal, and he doesn't want to write a blank cheque. The regulator has statutory duties and has also got Frank Field, who we've just seen being highly critical of Philip Green, breathing down the regulator's neck, and the regulator's terrified that whatever deal she does with Sir Philip Green, Frank Field's going to say, well, it's not enough money. Now, my own view is Sir Philip Green tonight, in that interview with me, is so categoric that A, he's got the money, and B, he's going to sort this problem, that I do think that if he doesn't sort it, well, that's the knighthood gone. And there's also a big question about whether actually he can comfortably remain in this country.
All right, Robert, thank you very much indeed. No knighthood yet. Thank you very much indeed. And a full version of Robert's exclusive interview with Sir Philip Green will be on News at 10 tonight.
OK, let's look at other news now. And two teenagers have become the UK's youngest couple to be convicted of double murder. They were aged just 14 when they smothered and stabbed a dinner lady and her daughter at a house in Spalding in Lincolnshire.
The boy admitted the murders, but the girl was found guilty by a jury today. As Damon Green reports, the couple, who are now aged 15, meticulously planned the attacks.
Liz and Katie Edwards, a mother and her daughter, killed as they slept by murderers aged just 14.
You're not videoing this, are you?
In happier times, celebrating Christmas at home, the school dinner lady, whose daughter, just 13, died in the bedroom next to hers. Today, a jury returned guilty verdicts on 2 charges of murder.
This tragedy was distressing for all families involved. For Katie's school friends, for Elizabeth's colleagues, friends and children at the school where she worked, as well as having a shocking impact on the wider community of Spalding.
The killers can't be named for legal reasons, but it was the boy who brought a knife to the rear of this house as part of a plot hatched days before.
The plan they agreed was for the boy to go to the house armed and in secret. On 3 consecutive nights he walked along this lonely riverside path with a bag of knives. On the first 2 nights, he was unable to gain access to the house. On the third night, he managed to climb through an open window. This was the window through which he entered, and once he'd climbed inside this house, 5 Dawson Avenue, he moved through the property, armed with one of the knives and looking for the bedrooms of his victims. It was late at night, and they hadn't been woken by his entry. When the killer found the mother and daughter in their separate rooms, they were still asleep. He held the knife, but of the girl, the prosecution said that she was the driver of the conspiracy, that brutality and contempt oozes from every pore. Together with her young boyfriend, they planned and carried out cold, calculated and callous killings. Katie's father was in court to hear how her killers had a bath and watched television afterwards, leaving their murder weapon lying in the young girl's bedroom. What happened to Liz has shocked the community where she lived.
She was very thoughtful. She understood how she could help people. She didn't just turn up. She was there and thinking about what was needed.
The 14-year-olds told police that after killing the mother and daughter, they'd meant to take their own lives, but instead they ate ice cream and lived to face a life behind bars for what they've done. Damon Green, ITV News at Nottingham Crown Court.
The cost of living in Britain has risen with inflation at its highest rate in nearly 2 years. The biggest jump was in the cost of clothing, as well as petrol prices, hotels and restaurants, which saw the consumer price index jump to 1% in September.
The long-awaited decision on expansion at Heathrow or Gatwick airports will be announced next week. The government will choose the option it's going to support before a public consultation and then a Commons vote next year. And in a rare move to head off a cabinet split, ministers will be allowed to express their own views. Well, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Westminster for us. And Carl, this has been going on for so long. The Prime Minister couldn't possibly delay a decision for any longer, could she?
That's right, decision had to be made sometime. She's believed to have told Cabinet this has gone on too long. So next week, probably Tuesday, a Cabinet subcommittee will decide Heathrow or Gatwick, and it's widely expected that a third runway at Heathrow will get the nod. Now that's partly because the government's own Independent Airports Commission said that was the best option, but it's also because of this piece of paper. Today the Prime Minister wrote to her Cabinet saying that ministers would be allowed to an extent to voice their opposition to whatever the decision would be. Now, this is seen as necessary because some cabinet ministers, particularly the Education Secretary, Justine Greening, but also to an extent Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, are vehemently opposed to expansion at Heathrow. And it's not thought that this letter would have been necessary if Gatwick was going to be the final decision. So this could prevent resignations from the cabinet if, indeed, as expected, it's Heathrow that gets the nod. Although, as you say, the final decision will be next winter.
Indeed, Carl, thank you.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News. The latest from Iraq on the battle for Mosul.
And Donald Trump's wife, Melania, comes out fighting for her man.
My husband is real. He's raw. He tells it as it is. He's kind. He's a gentleman.
Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Facing booby traps and suicide attacks, Iraqi government and Kurdish forces advanced further towards Mosul today. Backed by US and British airstrikes, they seized more villages on the outskirts of the city, which is the so-called Islamic State's last major stronghold. But it's slow progress. Our senior international correspondent, Joan Irvine, is with the Kurdish Peshmerga and sent this report on the road to Mosul.
Keeping enemy heads down. IS aren't far away, and the gunfire gives Kurdish soldiers the chance for a quick look over no man's land. They want a glimpse of home. These men are from what will be the next village liberated. Having fled from there in June 2014, they can hardly wait to return. It will be the happiest moment of my life, said 62-year-old Rad. But while some people will soon be going back home, others are having to flee. They have just left Mosul. There are few more dangerous undertakings than escaping the clutches of IS and crossing over, but they managed it carrying a few belongings and a white flag. Regarding the battle, with the help of coalition airstrikes still smouldering today, the Kurds did make important gains. Yesterday morning, and for 2 years preceding that, this road was a dual carriageway in the Islamic State. Now, under normal circumstances, the city of Mosul would be just 10 minutes drive away. However, for the time being, the advance here has been halted because advances elsewhere haven't gone so well. These Iraqi forces want to wait for their colleagues to catch up before pressing ahead. In a house in a captured village, we saw rooms full of piles of earth. IS go to great lengths to hide their tunnels from coalition drones. And these networks amounted to extensive living quarters underground. We saw only a fraction of one system in what is a small village. What must the defences in Mosul be like? These pictures emerged from there today, IS propaganda purportedly showing them ready for the fight. Taking the fight to them will be the Iraqi Mosul Brigade, which fled the city 2 years ago. The chance for redemption will soon be theirs. John Irvine, ITV News, Northern Iraq.
Here, an NHS trust severely underestimated the risk posed by mental health patients to the public, a new report has found. An independent review looked at the cases of people killed by mentally ill patients known to Sussex NHS Trust over the past decade. It says 2 of the deaths were avoidable. Our social affairs editor, Penny Marshall, spoke to the son of one of the victims. Joseph Goswell's mother, Susan, was killed by her husband in 2007, something he says could have been stopped.
They could have saved my mother's life. Who's to foresee how they were with my father, but because he wanted to take his life. But my mother certainly would have been alive today.
Do you think nothing was learnt really from the case?
No, not from the beginning. But I'm hoping and praying that there will be lessons to be learnt from this one.
Joseph Goswell there. Melania Trump has jumped to the defence of her husband Donald, claiming his lewd comments were nothing more than boy talk and accusations of sexual assault are lies.
In interviews with US TV networks, she said the Republican is a gentleman, but admitted being surprised by the language he used. Our Washington correspondent Rob Moore reports.
Donald Trump is once more denouncing his accusers as liars, claiming the allegations about his unwanted sexual advances on women are being orchestrated by his political opponents. And now Melania has stepped forward to defend her husband for his comments 11 years ago.
He apologized. I accept his apology. I hope the American people will accept it well.
It was the moment that would have tested any marriage. Donald Trump talking in vulgar, even predatory terms about other women.
We knew that, you know, tapes will come out, people won't want to go against him. But my husband is real, he's raw, he tells it as it is. He's kind, he's a gentleman, he supports everybody, he supports women.
She says their marriage is exceptionally strong and claims her husband's lewd talk is banter and nothing more.
Sometimes I said, I have 2 boys at home. I have my young son and I have my husband.
Melania claims the accusations of assault are part of a media and Clinton conspiracy.
He would never do that, that everything was organized and put together to hurt him, to hurt his candidacy.
And as we witnessed last night, Trump supporters, like the candidate and his wife, blame the media for the explosive allegations that have surfaced. Many believing it's all part of an establishment backlash.
The mood within these rallies is now noticeably shifting. It's no longer just about anger and frustration. It's more ominous than that. It is a contempt for the media in particular.
But the Trump campaign is rapidly running out of time. Melania's defence of her husband may help, but tomorrow's final presidential debate is perhaps his last chance. Robert Moore, ITV News, Wisconsin.
And finally tonight, the royal approval for Britain's record-breaking Olympic and Paralympic stars. In the past few minutes, they've been at a special reception in Buckingham Palace hosted by the Queen.
Yes, it all brings to an end 2 days of celebrations.
No pressure, just the whole of London. Whoa, what's that? OK.
Earlier, gymnast Max Whitlock performed for thousands of people who honoured their heroes in London's Trafalgar Square. That is it for now. Raggy Omar is here at 10.
But from all of us here, have a very good evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.